When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadavji, your podcast host, a practicing clinical social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 33, Disruption and Chaos Endured, and Now She Soars Above It All. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our wonderful and daring guest, Maria Morvai. Maria is the founder and principal lawyer of MMA Law Firm, a boutique law firm, and is a real estate investor. She is a member of Law Society of Ontario, the Women's Law Association of Ontario, the Women's Executive Network, both the Ontario and Canadian Bar Associations, and a founding member of Immigrant Women in Business. She regularly writes legal blogs that help her readers get educated in the areas of real estate, wills and estates, and family law. And she is also involved in several pro bono projects. Originally from Estonia, with Russian origins, she grew up in a post-Soviet country that was healing from the Soviet occupation by turning against non-ethnic minorities, all while entering independence in a state of serious disorder and economic chaos. From a young age, Maria learned to hide her vulnerabilities and weaknesses since there was no place left in her life for being weak. After moving to Canada at age 24, Maria completed the NCA accreditation process, which is an alternative route taken by internationally trained lawyers to get certified in Canada. Hi, Maria. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast. How are you?
Hi, Salima. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to have this chat with you today. I am really excited that you have been able to come onto the show and just represent your story, to be able to delve into your story, which we'll be doing in a moment. But also, I want to take a second to really express how gracious I am that you bring with you willingness to share, to really go down into that vulnerable place, and even your support to take a stance and stand with me as I build this mission to help break down barriers of mental stigma. So thank you so very much.
Well, thanks for having me.
You are welcome. It's more exciting for me than anything. And Maria, in case you're still wondering, the podcast is about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether it's directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And one thing that we know is that no matter what the story is, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way. And that's the part that usually remains out of sight, tucked away. So this platform, it serves a way to break these barriers of mental stigma that really have been conditioned in our society. So our presence together, what we're doing today, the conversation that we're going to have, I hope is really to encourage other people to dare and share and tell what they typically might have reservation for expressing. And of course, I'm bringing a trend forward that is called the mental beauty rethink. Maria, what do you think when you hear about the mental beauty rethink? What comes to mind?
Well, first thing that comes to mind is the mind that is probably healthy, because healthy mind would be a beautiful mind. Healthy, I would
Mm-hmm.
think probably mind that is balanced, that is mindful of the problems that it has to deal with, but deals with the problems in healthy and self-serving manner in a way. Um, so I think if we all just learn to work with ourselves and just put our
Mm-hmm.
mind to serving the greater good that is out there for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like how you've put it. And I think, the recent trend that's being realized over the last number of months, I appreciate the vocalizations that are coming up from people. What previously might have been people feeling shunned or even shamed. So I feel like we're quite a ways away to fully breaking barriers, but I feel like society's on the right track. Mental health is getting traction, and that beautiful mind that you talk about, that beauty, yes, it changes the feeling of it when you say it, right? When you say mental health, it's not viewed the same as when someone says physical health. So I really like how you have sort of painted that a healthy mind is a beautiful mind, and mental beauty, that we're embracing all parts of beauty and all parts of health. So really like how you put that together. So Maria, I am ready with my question lineup. Are you ready for them?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Maria, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. How would it read?
Yeah. I actually wanted to borrow Nelson Mandela's quote today,
Okay.
and the quote states, "It always seems impossible until it is done."
Nelson Mandela's quote, "It always seems impossible until it is done."
Yes, that's the quote. Mhm.
Wow. Okay, I really like that
Mhm.
quote.
Mhm.
Okay, can you say a little bit more about this quote, what it means to you?
Yes, so many things in my life just seems out of reach, and I was born and raised in a little bit of the environment where we were told directly or indirectly that the bigger good in life, bigger success is out of our reach, simply because we were kind of like a write-off generation. It's something that might seem like a little bit of a cliche, but where I'm coming from, it was a big deal, and a lot of people believed in that. And somehow it did not become an situation for me. Somehow I was able to establish my goals and just get to them through all the challenges that I had to deal with. And the funny thing, oftentimes I found myself sitting there and thinking and just picturing this the end goal, and it always seems something too good to be true, something almost that only certain areas or certain people can achieve, people that are predisposed to that, people that are coming from elite society, maybe people that come from wealthy families or people that are born in the right countries at the right time, but definitely not me. And then at the end of the day, I'm there and I'm doing what I'm doing, and just I'm just as successful as the people that did not have to go through what I've gone through. And at the end of the day, I think it's always just what you put your mind towards to and what you work towards, and you can always achieve what you plan to achieve, or what it is that your end goal, what it is that you actually want
Mhm.
to achieve.
Well, that says a lot about it. It always seems impossible until it is done. Beautiful. Thank you, Nelson Mandela, for that quote, because everything you just described certainly does allude to this quote for sure. I see it. So
Mhm.
tell us, Maria, Tell us more about your untold story, if it's possible. Share with the who, the what, the when, the where's.
Yes, so I was born in 1983, and I was born in Estonia. Actually, I'm the second generation born and raised in Estonia. So my mother language, my mother tongue is the Russian tongue. And not only because, my great parents came from different areas of Soviet Union, also because at the Soviet times, the Russian language was the official language of the Union. So we were never really exposed to authentic Estonian language, unfortunately. Not too much, even though my grandmother, funny enough, she's bilingual. She came from St. Petersburg during the Second World War. Her family got killed. She was 5 years old, and she was picked up by the carriage who was headed towards Estonia by
Mm-hmm.
completely unknown people, and she was adopted by Estonian family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they have their own interesting history. They endured a lot of pain and a lot of hardship from 1940 to 1991. They were dominated by Soviet Union, as I just mentioned.
Right.
And a lot of Russian people, they were just encouraged to move to those countries and settle. Or some of them were just moved as my grandma due to some historic events. In 1991, the Soviet Union, ceased to exist, and a new country, the Republic of Estonia, was created. And there was no clear conception of how, they're supposed to complete such a transformation. Like most of other Soviet republics, it entered independence in a state of serious disorder and definitely a lot of economic chaos. I was 8 years old at that time, and I just remember going through this a very long, very prolonged period of chaos that took place after between the age of 8 and pretty much age of 24 when I left Estonia for Canada. I
Mm-hmm.
experienced a lot of discrimination. There was a poverty. We were pretty poor.
Mm-hmm.
We had to go through a lot of separation with the loved ones because a lot of people fled the country. And of course, there was no money, and of course, there was discrimination due based on the
Mm-hmm.
language and based on not being ethnic society, not being ethnic Estonian.
When you were saying that you were 8 years old, that's when everything collapsed. That's when the regime collapsed. That's when everything.
Yeah,
Okay, so that was how old you were, and from age 8 to 24, that's when that's a long time to endure.
yeah. Well, actually, things started getting a little bit better around maybe when I was probably around 18, because this is when Estonia entered the European Union. But then,
Mm-hmm.
for such a short period of time, we went through different political regimes. Everything was just so up in the air, and it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
affected me being, just recognizing myself, who am I, and like where I belong.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very important. I think it's probably the age where you try to establish those connections for yourself and the feeling of self belonging and self identification.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was all over the place. Um, and not only that, unfortunately, after the Soviet Union collapsed, Estonian people realized that they have this huge trauma that they need to heal from, and unfortunately, they couldn't figure out the better way of healing from the trauma than by just shutting us out of the society. Um, every door pretty much got closed very fast for non-Estonian people, and they were very protective of their own small economy that they were building and raising as a small child, and they wanted to maintain jobs for themselves, and they wanted to, reestablish everything based on their own culture and language. So that would, by definition, shut out everyone who does not belong.
People must have felt so stuck.
So unfortunately, while the area of collapse affected me by me just not being able to self-identify, it did affect my parents in a much deeper way, and it's also affected them on the personal level. They actually divorced, and around the same time when I was 8 years old, and
So when
my
you were 8 years old, at the same time, your parents got a divorce. Did that mean that that changed the relationship with your mom or dad?
yeah, there was a lot of financial tension between the two.
Mm-hmm.
It was really all about, not just being able to have a normal meal sometimes. And I think the financial issues, they took a toll on the relationship at the end,
Mm-hmm.
and the relationship just collapsed. And that he basically left us for a woman that was already pregnant. And then she started giving birth. So
Mm-hmm.
she had 5 children from him
Right.
after, within
Right.
a very short period of time. And I lost the connection with my dad. I would see him rarely. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
my mom was meant to meet with him so I could collect a little bit of like a spousal or child support money. The money were really nothing. It was just about maybe equivalent to $2, right? So,
Right.
these days, it was really a small amount of money. And
Right.
my mom made me go and see him monthly to collect it because she could not pay him. And at the end of the day, he said, my daughter only wants to meet with me because she needs money from me. And that was obviously not true.
Okay. So I'm curious, when your father made the decisions that he made, did any part of you feel abandoned?
Um, you know, they, I felt abandoned ever since. And it was mostly triggered by not really being able to share his attention with our children. And if they would just divorce and move, just like separate, get the separate ways and live separately, that probably would be fine as long as
Mm-hmm.
I would be able to still see him and spend quality time with him.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, has never been the case.
Mm-hmm.
Because all his attention really went to the second family and the second children. And every time when there was a new small child, he needed more attention than I do. And then the child would grow up a little bit, and then when there would be a new child that would need
Mm-hmm.
a new attention again. And I'm sure it's not just me who felt this way. I'm sure his other children also felt the same way.
Right.
But there was also a new child, so who needed always more attention. So I never had a quality time with my dad. I have very few memories. One time we went to the zoo, and one time we went to the park, and that's about it. I can't really remember anything else.
Right. So
Mhm.
did you have any moments? I know you said that, there it was really hard to be vulnerable at a time where there was so much struggle, so much that you were witnessing that your mom had to go through and experience, and all of the tensions that were going on. Did you have any sort of internal coping mechanisms, or did you end up having thoughts that sort of kind of got ingrained in your mind that maybe they were not very helpful, but anything like that come up for you?
Yeah, after my dad left, I think I became a little bit of a father in the house, unfortunately, and obviously not like financially at first, but I think emotionally. I think what that meant for me is just seeing my mom going through everything she's been going through at the time, and just telling myself that I have to be strong. Like I can't be weak because she already has enough things to be sad about.
Right.
She said about divorce. She said about the country. She said about being shut out of everything, and not really. She said about not having money, and she said about her family leaving her and sisters moving, one to Moscow, the other one to Toronto. She said about losing everyone and everything, and she's been through a lot of health issues at the time too. So I just had to be strong.
Mm-hmm.
I had to shut down my own feelings, and I had to tell myself that you have to be there for her, and you have to be a support, and you have to do your best to provide for your mom emotionally and
Right.
financially. Hmm.
Right. I mean, that sounds like a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit too early, too fast. And as you mentioned the other time, I think it was a survival mode, but it also was the only way of that I saw would be helpful, because there would be many other ways to deal with the situations. You could go into self pity and you could go into
Right.
self destruction, but none of those ways would be helpful at the end. The only thing that would actually be constructive is to be strong and just maintain your strength, and
Yeah.
try get to something better, to the better
Mhm.
place in life, you know.
Maria, I'm curious, while you talk about how this was a lot of pressure and a lot to handle so much so quickly, being in survival mode, knowing it's the only way and the only path that you had to take that you felt you could be helpful, it seems like you were like this like little mini warrior on the outside, right? I'm just curious about what was happening on the inside. Was there any part of you that was crumbling, or was there any part of you that didn't feel good enough or worthy enough? Or did you have any of those types of things that happened on the inside that you were trying to hide from the outside because you knew there was no place for it?
Yeah. So first of all, I was extremely lonely, very, very lonely.
Mm.
And the loneliness was the biggest problem I had to deal with all my life.
Mm.
And second of all, there was always this feeling of, why me? Like, why am I just defective? Is something
Mm.
wrong with me? Um, so, yeah, there was always a feeling of like I'm just not one of those blessed human beings, who just got lucky. And I'm not lucky. I'm just not. Everything bad that could have happened probably, I mean, of course, it could have been much worse situations,
Mm-hmm.
but also there was no childhood, there was no proper upbringing, there was no proper support system, there was no proper um, just environment that could establish me as a self-secured, confident, and calm person. I started enduring a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression, stress. Some doctors, even back in Estonia, I remember first doctor I saw was probably 14 or 15. I saw a therapist, and he told me that my problem is my lack of self-identification. And he told me just maintain diary, and that's gonna help. But I don't think
Mm-hmm.
diary would help. So there was a lot of internal struggle,
Mm-hmm.
but I always felt that if I just work hard enough, I can get it under control.
And
You
then,
know,
is that true for
but
you? Does that happen?
it's still a little bit of an escape
Mm-hmm.
route. It does give you a sense of things being more under control because you have your structure in place and you just follow the structure.
Mm-hmm.
And when you work, you see things being achieved. And of course, you do achieve a little bit of a better environment for yourself and for your family. There is the other side to the situation. Unfortunately, if you already have a pre-existing anxiety and depression, it's just not going to go away if you work really, really hard. If you become a workaholic, your pre-existing anxiety and your pre-existing depression is most likely going to get worse because even though on the surface it might seem like something that can help you control the things and follow certain patterns, deep inside it's the additional trigger, right? Because there's so much stress, and especially in the work that I do, being a lawyer, there is so many stressful situations I have to deal with daily.
Mm-hmm.
So I do need a healthy mind to deal with them in the proper way. Otherwise, I'll just be distracting to myself and to my clients and to my files, which, obviously I cannot afford at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's definitely been a really intense journey, and there's definitely a lot of different parts that you
Mm-hmm.
have already uncovered.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more about the lack of self identification? What did you end up? I know it's an internal struggle, and I know that you said that if I worked hard enough, then I could control it. And I know you just spent some time talking about that, but I'm just curious, like, at what point did you really start working on that part of lack of
Mm-hmm.
self identification?
I mean, the lack of self identification was coming from few sources, and one of them was, of course, the linguistic and the nationality. The other source was just who am I for myself in my family, in my life, and who am I in my profession? And am I the warrior and am I the fighter,
Mm-hmm.
or am I a kind person who has compassion for other people's feelings? Because to be honest with you, when no one really cares about your feelings, you kind of grow up not really caring about other people's feelings too much too.
Okay.
Because if you don't have that in you, you can't really give it to others. And this is another thing I had to struggle with self love because I know that I need to master self love in order to be able to give it to others. And this is something that came to me, the self-awareness came to me not that long ago, maybe just about 8 to 10 years ago. And then since then, I've been trying to improve it. In terms of culture and language, I've been working on that since probably age of 12 to 14.
Okay.
And I was trying to become part of Estonian society. I actually went and I lived in Estonian families for a few times, for a month. I mastered the language. I got to Estonian university. I tried to make friends with Estonian people. But you know what? I can tell you, it just never felt right. It's never felt right what's been done to my people. And it's never felt right that we have to just be ashamed of who we are. You don't get to choose, where you're born and which language you master when you grow up. You don't get to
Mhm.
make those choices. It's not something you should be made ashamed of or feel yourself as a second class person. Same like with the race or with anything. Like it's never something that is ever acceptable. So even while trying to become the part of the society, one part of me was never able to accept it, and one part of me always wanted out, just to
Mhm.
get out of it. It just felt too. Just the society was closed-minded. The society was just not fair. The society was just too judgmental, and you
Mhm.
had to try and fit. You had to change yourself to try and fit. And a lot of people did that. When I was at the university, some of my classmates, people who went to the university with me, they pretended to be Estonian during the classes, and then one of them, we saw him at the mall with his mother. He spoke fluent Russian, so he was a Russian person, but he was so ashamed to admit it that he
Mhm.
pretended to be Estonian. Like he would never even talk to us because we had a group of Russian students there. We were always together,
Right.
sort of like a group of outcasts, a little bit, just hanging out together, not really socializing too much with anyone else. And he would just ignore us. He would never even try to approach us.
Mhm.
So this feeling never lasts. The feeling that I just need to leave the society. It's always been there with me. So that's why I started exploring the world pretty early in life. When I was 17, I went to England. I traveled around Europe. I went to Sweden, and I really love Sweden, by the way. I
Mhm.
went to US. I traveled around US, and I eventually went to visit my aunt in Toronto, and I just fell in love with the society here,
Mhm.
with how open-minded it is. And the society here has obviously its own issues, like any society out there. But if you compare issues here with the issues that I had to go through and that are still existing in my country, there's a big difference there. It's a very different society. It's much more open-minded. It's much more
Mhm.
accepting.
Mhm.
It's much more welcoming and just friendly. And this is something I really longed for pretty much all my life.
So, Maria, I'm curious. You talk about how you were able to explore the world a little bit more and started to travel to Sweden and other parts of Europe and so on around age 17. And you landed in Toronto after that. Were you 24 when because you
Yeah,
mentioned being 24
right.
before at some point. Okay, so you're about 24 when you landed in Toronto. So my curiosity is about being in that part of the world. Was there something that sparked you to realize there was more world
Mhm.
than where you were?
Yeah. It was actually just the Western culture that started coming to Estonia in, I guess, early 90s.
Okay.
Um, it's probably started with the TV. I remember
The
my
TV.
yeah,
Okay.
I remember my parents got this huge old TV box, and then the movies started coming to Estonia, Western movies, and they weren't even available on TV. First, we had to go to the cinema, movie theater, but it was a funny old cinema, and we had to watch, all sorts of Western movies.
Mm-hmm.
And there
Mm-hmm.
were a lot of movies at the time that were showcasing the self-made humans, achievers. A lot of the Western cinematography is the showcase highlights the achievers and just the people that get somewhere in their life if they put the mind to it. And And this to me was a little bit of the wake up call. I was just looking at something. It was just like a breath of the fresh air, something coming new to my very closed world at the time, very focused on things that we've been going through and just internal, pain and transformation. But I've just realized that the world is out there and it's very different, and you can live your life differently. I think
Mm-hmm.
I was probably about 14 years old when I went for a run, because I used to run a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I went for a run, and I was just running, and I was just telling myself that I'll be one of the people that they make movies about. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
gonna go and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna achieve everything I want to achieve, and I'll just be in a much better place eventually. You know, just like those people in the movies.
Wow, well, you really put your mind to it. Solid mindset from age 14 and
Yeah,
possibly younger. But I mean, if that was a moment when you're running and you tell yourself, I'll be one of those people, I'm going to achieve everything I want to, that is so inspiring. Wow. So, Maria, when people come to see me for therapy, individuals are typically in one of three places when they start with me. Some people are getting started, trying to sort of understand what part they need to address or focus on at the beginning. Some people are in the middle of their journey and they need some help to navigate to figure out where they need to focus, or what's the next thing they need to understand and reflect on. And some people are looking back, and they're looking back either getting closure or looking back more in a introspective way. And some are looking back so that they're able to move forward. Where
mm.
in this journey would you say that you are in terms of your untold story? Would you say that you're getting started in the middle or looking back?
I think at this point I'm looking back more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
It's 12 years in Canada. It's been 12 very intense years of trying to achieve many things. And I am in the place where I'm settled, because I do have my own practice right now, and I'm reporting to myself, which has been my goal for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And it also helps me to cope with a lot of um, emotional baggage. So I am looking back while I'm still looking in the future, because I know that there will still be things for me to work on. There will be things that I have to um, still perfect. One of those things is still learning to balance the work life
Mm-hmm.
balance. Can I
Yes.
say that? Balance the balance.
Yeah, balancing. Yeah, the
Improve the
work-life
balance.
balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where I think I wanted to mention that life is stressful for lawyers, unfortunately, and how lawyers are
Yes.
impacted by the mental health issue.
Mhm.
And this is something I've been through myself, unfortunately, because as the person who is struggling with a lot of control issues and some anxiety issues, of course. So there's still things for me to learn, and there's still things for me to work on. And of course, one of the things is just maintaining mental beauty.
That's right. Mental beauty. I love it that you're using it. But that's the whole beautiful thing, right? So the impact of your journey has led you to the place where you can look back. And what I'm hearing you say is that I'm pretty reflective. I'm introspective now. I'm really taking stock of my experiences and what I went through and what happened. And it really has shaped who I am today. And because such is life, there are many things that we still have to work through, right? But that
Mhm,
part of your journey is what's allowing you to look back now and allowing you to look back in a way that helps you propel forward. And
mhm.
the fact that you just said mental beauty, I'm like doing a little happy dance here on the side. Oh, that's awesome. So tell me, what's your key message to the listeners of our show?
The key message would be
Yeah.
learning to live a fulfilling life.
Hmm.
The message is to learn self respect and learn to let go of the feelings that are not serving or not helpful,
Hmm.
and learning not to look back, just look in the future. Or even better, just live in the present and just enjoy the moment if you can.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Those are really important messages, and I really appreciate that you have these words of wisdom. Excellent.
Mhm.
So I'm curious about something that's been pivotal for you, like that game changer inspiration that would be close to you that reflects your untold story. So would there be a book or a quote or an event or a person, something that speaks to you? What helped you pivot?
Yeah, there is a book that I really enjoy. It's called The Power of Now, A Guide to Spiritual Enlightenment. It's a very good book for the people that learn to cope with anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
especially the people that have anxiety that relates to, the future that might happen in the future. I think it's very helpful for lawyers because
Mm-hmm.
lawyers tend to always worry about what can go wrong in the file. I mean, lawyers are
Mm-hmm.
paid for, predicting risk.
This is an Eckhart Tolle book, right? The Power of Now?
Yes,
Yeah.
Eckhart Tolle's book that tells
Mm-hmm.
you that there is no need to worry about the future because,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course you should think about the future, but
Mm-hmm.
don't get anxious about something that did not happen yet.
Right. So this is the part of the show where I ask you who you want to give a shout out to. Is there a cause or organization that's been impactful to you on your journey? Who are we giving a
Well,
shout out to?
yeah, I would want to definitely give a shout out to Law Society of Ontario. They do a
Okay.
great work,
Mm-hmm.
and they do allow people like me, internationally trained lawyers, to come to the market
Mm-hmm.
because they do understand how important it is that our society is more open and inclusive to everyone. And of course, Immigrant Women in Business, the organization that is so helpful to all immigrant women, just helps to expand your network and is just always there for you to, just encourage you and to recognize your achievements and, help you to recognize yourself for everything you've done in your life and where you're at. And it's always great to have people on the outside that are there for you in in this respect and that you can connect to because they're just like you.
Amazing. Law Society of Ontario and Immigrant Women in Business. All right. So how can people connect with you if they would like to, Maria? What are your handles? What are your social handles?
Yeah, I have LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I have my website. They can just Google me, either Maria Morway or MMA Law Firm.
Okay. Yeah. No, we'll put all of that information on the show notes for today's episode so that they'll be able to find you. But you are available on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and you have a website.
Yes, that's right. So I'm looking forward to connecting to anyone. And if anything, I'm digging for young generation, for women that come to Canada, for young female immigrants.
Amazing. That's lovely. My goodness. Maria, guess what? You've just dared yourself to share. Congrats, my dear.
Thank you, Salima.
How was the experience for you?
I was really good. I'm happy
Yeah.
because I know a lot of people come to Canada. They have probably same inspiration the way I did, and they have the same goals, right? People don't immigrate to Canada, especially in the young, maybe early 20s for like no reason. I'm sure they all have some career goals, and so I just wanted to be an inspiration for those people and tell them that everything's going to be okay.
You definitely have been an inspiration. And Maria, it has been such a pleasure to hear about your story, journey, your journey to all the strides that have brought you to where you are today, where you are in your life, and just such unveiling and articulation of the difficulties of what you endured and how you've soared. So, thank you for this important chat and for all of your deep, deep sharing today.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Selena.
And once again, Maria, thank you for being a part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma. To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.